Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
So I was thinking about something that I wanted to ask you
hmm
guys before we started recording. Can you guys wear, Courtney's looking at me like, where are you going with this?
I'm just surprised you remembered it after we talked for an hour and a
I
half
know
before we hit record.
we did
I'm
talk for,
impressed. Honestly, I'm impressed.
it was pretty impressive. I did during our whole conversation be like, what was I gonna, is there something else I got? But I remembered it, so I'm going with it. Um, are you guys able to wear earrings and headphones at the same time? Like
Depends on the earring.
dangly earrings, like not just like studs.
Maybe. If okay, so our earrings we bought that have like the big thing, like the rose
Uh-huh.
ones, like no, because then they stick out. But I feel
Yeah.
like if it like has like length to it where it like the dangle doesn't start till after your earlobe,
Okay,
I feel
like
like I
maybe
can.
so like a dangly earring that doesn't have like a stud too, because like some dangly
Yeah,
earrings like have the stud
like
and then
just a
have
hook. If it's
okay.
just a hook, I feel like I can because then the dangle comes later. But if there's like a big
Mm,
stud with the dangle, I can't because then the things hit it.
okay. See, yeah, so I was wearing earrings when I put in my headphones to start recording this podcast 6 hours ago because Courtney and I talked forever, even though we spent the majority of the day together in person and
Yeah.
spent a few hours together yesterday. But
Yeah.
here we are. We're
That's
still
just who we are.
still on
Are
our
you guys even
bullshit, you know,
surprised at this point?
right? But yeah, I put in my headphones to start getting ready to record, and I had to take out my earrings because they were just like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, is this a universal experience or is this just me? Also, I move a lot.
So we
I
just be
talk
like, ding 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 ding
exactly. So I'm
ding
like,
with your headphones.
I'm like, do other people like, are they just still? And so they don't have that issue because they're not flinging their head in every direction.
True. I feel like it's been a while since I've worn headphones and earrings like at the same time. So I feel like I'm
Yeah.
just having trouble remembering because I work from home. So I don't really even try anymore. Even with like Teams meetings, like with my boss, I'm just like,
Yeah.
you know what my face
No.
looks like, man. We're fine.
Exactly. Like we don't sometimes I'll put on makeup, but you
I
know.
will if it's like my camera's on and there's other people in the company. But if it's
Yeah.
like my boss and stuff, I'm like,
True.
nah, you know what my face look like.
Or
You
you
know
can
what
be
this.
like some people I know that will do like the Zoom like makeup filter, which is like a thing. I don't know if you know that's a thing.
Oh,
But when you move your head, the makeup doesn't always move with your face.
oh
So you have like
no.
lips and
I knew there was like a feature, but I thought it just like softened everything so it
there's
wasn't
that
so
one too.
harsh.
Yeah, there's
But I
that
didn't
one
know there
too,
was
but
a
there's
makeup
also
one.
there's like a full makeup one where you can like put on makeup and
And I also think about how like men don't ever think about like, should I put makeup on? So I'm like, why do I? Which
that is true.
another topic I can talk about. I had a
Oh.
really good Courtney moment this past week of like
Mm.
growth, and I had to share it.
Wow, please
So
do.
I was out of town for work, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go work out. Just do something. I'm gonna like walk for 15 minutes and then do
Hmm.
like random weight things for 15 minutes and like call it a day. So I go down, and it's the smallest gym I've ever seen in a hotel. It's a little tiny thing. Like there's like a big tall bike, a treadmill, and an elliptical, and then like behind it is where the weights are, and that's it. Like really small.
Yeah,
So I walk in, and I was like, oh, of course there's a man in here. There's always a
of
man in
course.
here. But the
Always a man
problem
in the
is
gym.
because it's so small, he was straight behind the treadmill because he was trying to look at the mirror because the mirror is then whatever. Then I
Yeah.
was like, well, what do I do? Do I leave? Do I not do it? And then I was up there and went, if this man walked in and saw me on these weights, would he think twice about stepping on the treadmill he wants?
Hmm.
And he would
Nope.
not. And so I just walked my ass over there and got on the treadmill in front of him. And I was
Good
proud.
for you. Good
I
for
was
you,
scared, but I
Courtney.
was proud.
You're like, I was shitting myself the whole time, but I did it.
Hoping he didn't see my pants. but
Like my heart was
uh,
racing, not because I was walking, because I was panicking,
I
but
was burning a lot of calories
it's
because
an
I
extra
was
workout.
afraid.
It's anxiety is such a good workout, guys.
Well, it was also weird too because he's like trying to use the mirror. So he's like right, like his
Yeah.
face is right next to mine.
And you're
And he's
like,
doing like
no.
tricep dips and he's like, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking weird. But
Was
I was
he
like, you know what?
audibly grunting? Because why do men audibly grunt every time they lift a weight?
In his defense, he was using like 35 pounds to do his tricep dips. So I was like,
that's acceptable.
At least you're not doing like 10 pounds. Like he was using the big boy weights and wasn't too loud, but it was still like loud enough to be awkward because it was quiet in there.
Yeah. I worked in apartments for a while, and we had like one of our apartments had like a really nice gym that I worked at. And I mean, like a huge, like basically like a full size, regular gym. And the men would come in there and they would just like, like the most, and I'm like, you're like bench pressing 30 pounds right now. Like, what are you doing?
That's the thing I hate, when it's like clearly like not that heavy. And like, I've been known, like if I'm weightlifting, to like let out like a little, like, just like try and get it up. But I'm like, most of the time they're just like doing it to be loud.
Or slamming it on the ground. Oh my God, that shit drives me crazy. Like, like you're not in like a weightlifting gym. Like,
how do you not drop it on your foot? I mean, I guess for the benches, like that makes sense, like with the bar. But like the dumbbells, I'm always like, that shit gonna bounce. It's gonna hit your foot. You won't break your foot. Maybe it's just me, but
But I'm glad. So I'm proud of you for.
Thank you.
I almost said I'm glad of you, and that doesn't make sense.
Glad of you.
I'm glad of you.
But it's little victories every day that we're trying. And if you're a woman and you're feeling like maybe I shouldn't take up space, like, you know what? That man would never think twice about just walking in and getting on the equipment he wants. So don't you think about it. You just do what you gotta do.
To go back to what you said originally of like, if that man walked in and was going to get on the treadmill and you were lifting weights, blah, blah, blah. If that man walked in and you were on the treadmill that he wanted to get on, he would not think twice about like, how long are you going to be on there? Let me just sit here and like hover over you. And like,
I think you're walking wrong. I think your form's bad.
Yes. Oh my God. I see this so much. I don't go to like, I haven't gone to like not an in-person gym. I mean, I guess an in-person gym. Like I work out at home mostly, or like classes. Like I haven't gone to like a free gym.
Same, because it's too scary. Yeah, not like a Gold's Gym, Planet Fitness type thing.
Exactly. Like I used to go to the YMCA when we lived in Richmond, and where the fuck was I going with the story? Oh yeah, but you would see it all the time of like women like working out, doing their thing, and like men coming up trying to like correct them or to like give them a different like. I mean, it's one thing if someone's doing something that could like hurt themselves, and you're like, hey, like I just want you to know that but to just like completely like. First of all, you don't know what the fuck they're like. There's different ways, like some equipment, there's multiple ways to use it. So like to come in and be like, oh, well, you blah, blah, blah. And let me show you how to do it correctly. And like, I follow like Olympic weightlifters and shit on Instagram who are like, I'll be like in a random gym and I'll have people come up and correct me, like not knowing who I am and what I do. And they're like, no, that's not right.
I do know also the girl we follow, Rebecca, said one time that a guy came up to her and was like, you're doing this wrong. And she was like, I understand you probably have good intentions, but please do not say this to me or anyone else, because it's intimidating enough to come to the gym. Yes. And then when women finally get the like courage to go over to like the free weight stand, because it's all men, and then you're like critiquing her, like she's not going to want to come back. Like,
exactly.
So.
Because it's like, you can go in with the mindset of like, no one's paying attention to me. Like everyone is just doing their own thing. And the first time that happens, you're like, oh, everyone is paying attention to me. And that's, you're never going to unthink that again.
And especially if you're like a woman where it's like all like around men. Like I would get that way too. Like when I used to go to the gym, like where it's like, please just let me use this and leave me alone.
Yeah. Anyway, so as always, we just kind of have some random conversation that comes out of nowhere, and hope you guys enjoyed that.
Never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, good time. So we do have one really sad update this week. I'm sure everyone has heard by this point, especially because we're, a couple weeks out now. But on March 27th, 28-year-old Audrey Hale did open fire at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, which was preschool through 6th grade, I think. So like, I mean, elementary school, very young children.
And I think it was like a charter private school as well.
So I did see that the shooter was a former student there as well. But they did kill Evelyn Dykhouse. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that. We looked very hard to find a video and could not find it anywhere. Hallie Scruggs and William Kinney, who were all 9 years old, as well as 3 teachers, 61-year-old Cynthia Peak, 61-year-old Mike Hill, and 60-year-old Catherine Kuntz. So as we've talked about many, many times on this podcast, the shooter was able to legally purchase 7 weapons from 5 different stores that were used in this shooting. So we hear it all the time.
And was under current counseling for emotional distress as well. So that is something that I believe we do need, maybe a no buy, like we have a no fly, maybe a no buy. And that be one of the things that puts you on that list, because they could hurt. I mean, they obviously hurt other people, but also themselves. So it's just kind of ridiculous we don't have that, or just a waiting period, because also if they had to wait 48 hours, would the same thing happened?
I'm just so tired of people saying that guns are not the issue and that we have gun laws, and it's like they're not strict enough, because every mass shooting that we have covered in the past, I don't even know how long, have been legally purchased weapons. Like, these aren't, because that's everyone's argument is like, oh, if you want to get a gun, you'll get a gun. And it's like, I don't think anyone's saying shootings are going to disappear if we have stricter gun laws, but it's going to help, because the majority of these are legally purchased weapons. Like, there are just so many loopholes of how you can legally purchase a weapon. I don't know why that's so hard to comprehend.
I mean, and in Tennessee, we basically have no gun laws. It is easier to get a gun than to do anything else. Honestly, you're 18, you can just go in and buy one. Like, that's basically it. There's no waiting period. There's no background check. No permit required. No training required. Nothing.
Yeah. And as we've talked about before with a lot of shooters recently, I'm sure all the time, but especially recently that we've talked about, in other states, even if they do have a background check, if they have a charge that was a felony charge that they pled down to a misdemeanor, now they are able to purchase a weapon. So like, there would be like a brief period where they couldn't purchase it because they had this pending felony charge, and then they took a plea deal and it got knocked down to a misdemeanor, and now you can purchase a weapon again. And it's just like, even when you have some of these things in place, they are not strict enough to prevent these things from happening. Other countries have put these strict gun laws into place, and they see a mass decrease in these shootings. Like, it's crazy how that works.
Crazy how it works. But I don't know. I know we're probably preaching to the choir to most of you. But
or if not, you've turned us off by this point. So, because you're tired of
you're
hearing
gone
our
now. Or you 15 forward. But I don't know, at this point, this sounds so like depressing, but I just don't see change coming.
Yeah.
Because
if children are literally getting murdered in their schools and change is not happening? So what would happen to cause change? That's, I mean,
nothing at this point.
Yeah.
Well, now that you've had a depressing update, you get a depressing story. So
you're welcome for that.
Happy Tuesday.
Why do we do this again? I mean, why do we do this to ourselves?
This episode also, I took the lead research on, and I tried to start researching it while I was out of town, and I got a little too spooked.
Yeah.
I had to wait till I got back.
I have had that happen many a time.
Yeah. Just the nature of this one was more
like, not right now.
Scary. Not right now. Not right now. So our sources for today are an Unsolved Mysteries episode called 13 Minutes, findagrave.com, a Fox 5 Atlanta article, and WRBL article. So on April 15th, 2004, Patrice Endres went missing from her salon in Cumming, Georgia. There was only a 13-minute window in which she disappeared. What happened to Patrice? Did she run away? Was she kidnapped? A lot of details are still unknown. So Patrice Tambers was born on November 28th, 1965. She eventually got married to Don Black, and they had one son together, Pistol. They did end up divorcing, but they did remain very close friends afterwards. And eventually she met Rob Endres when he came in for a haircut one day to where she was working. So she was 30 at the time, and he was actually 50. So there was like quite a big age gap for that.
Wow, that's a big,
20 years.
I mean, teaches once you are a legal adult, like whatever, obviously not okay under 18. Once you're a legal adult, whatever, but still cannot imagine for me personally.
Yeah, that's just a really big gap. But they did get married on March 2nd, 1997. So Pistol said in the first year that Rob was really nice. Like, he was really trying to be like a stepfather, try to include himself in the things he was doing, like take him to football practice, like really try to like get a relationship with him. But then it just kind of suddenly flipped. He just turned into this like completely different person. He just acted differently towards him. He kind of made Pistol feel like he just wasn't good enough. And like Rob would just like walk past his room and just say like crude stuff to him, just like turned basically. And many others described Rob as just really overprotective and like jealous with anything that came to Patrice, like even jealous of her relationship with friends. So maybe that kind of went on to her son as well, like jealous of their relationship, lashing out at Pistol. And they did fight a lot. And we'll kind of circle back to their relationship just a little bit later on. So Patrice was very involved in Pistol's life. She tried to never miss a game, be there for all of his events. Patrice did have a passion for cutting hair. She loved it. So she loved making people feel beautiful. And she worked for many years in other people's salons, but eventually she was finally able to open her own. It was just her dream, and she was just so proud of it. Like Rob helped her like open it up, get set up, and she called it Tamber's Trim and Tan. And it was on Georgia Highway 369. So Patrice was always smiling, always positive. She loved to make people feel special. Like the community just loved her. And they even said like people would come in for their appointments and would just stay after, like just to chat with her because she was just such a bubbly person and just so nice and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So on the morning of April 15th, it was just a normal morning. Patrice woke Pistol up like usual and got him to school. She dropped him off and said she loved him and that she would see him that afternoon. And then later on during school, Pistol was taken from his class by a school officer, and they asked if he'd spoken to his mother, and he was like, no, I haven't, like, just been at school. So they asked him to try and get a hold of her, and he tried calling her 3 times with no answer. And Pistol said this was weird because he was like, she always answered, and if she ever missed his call, she would call back immediately, like as soon, like right away.
Yeah.
So Anne McDonald was a friend of Patrice's who came by every day because it was on her way home from work. So she was at the salon the day before Patrice went missing, and Patrice asked her if she was coming by the next day, and Anne was like, of course I am. Like, I come by every day. And Anne usually called her, and like that day her phone went to voicemail, and she said that was odd too. She was like, she always answers. And by the time she got there, police were actually at the shop. So police had gotten a 911 call where a client had showed up to Patrice's hair salon and she was missing. So the cash register was open and money was missing. Her purse was on the counter. That her keys were still in the salon. Her lunch was actually found on the counter by the microwave, like she'd been in the process of heating it up. And the rest of the salon looked normal, like no overturned furniture, no blood, no drag marks. Like it didn't look like a struggle of any kind. It didn't even really look like a crime scene at all, besides like the open cash register. The only thing really out of place was her vehicle. So it was facing like west, like in front of the building, but everyone said she would always like park next to the building and back in. So she was always kind of like parallel. No, she was always perpendicular, like with the building. And now she was like parallel with it. So they were like, that was weird. Like, why would she move her vehicle and then not be here anymore, basically?
Yeah. And I feel like too, if you're someone who like parks in the, especially if like you own this place, like you park in the exact same way every time, you know, like that's not something that you just randomly like, oh, I have my vehicle in a different spot today, the day I happen to be missing. It's like, that's definitely means something, even if we don't know exactly what.
And they said there was like a door on the side of the building, like she would come in through also. So it was like she would back it up. So she was like right next to the door. So it was like, why would she just move it out of nowhere? So they conducted a thorough search near the salon and in the woods, but they didn't find her. Police were hoping like maybe she had just run away. But like friends and family are like, she would never leave her son. Like she would not just leave Pistol. Like Pistol was her whole life. And Pistol did tell a story of about like 2 weeks before she went missing. She asked him, if I were ever go anywhere, like where would you go? And he said, I'm not sure, like I guess my dad's house. Like, and she didn't really say anything else. And it wasn't like she was saying she was going to disappear. It was more like a what if scenario. So like, again, it's like one of those things like you remember because of the circumstance, but it's like, doesn't mean like she was going to run away. It's just like sticks out in your mind.
Yeah.
So they wanted to try and build a timeline for Patrice's day. Patrice had customers in her shop the entire morning, and she had an appointment book. So they were able to see like literally her entire day, who was there at time, like what times. So at 8:50 a.m., Pam Shepard arrived for her 9 o'clock appointment. Pam did say Patrice seemed distracted that day. Like she wasn't as attentive as usual, like didn't really like talk to her as much, which was unusual. And she left around 11:05. And at 11:10, Paul Cantor arrived for his haircut and he left at 11:27. So he got a phone call as he was leaving the shop. So that was confirmed by his like cell phone records. So like he officially left the shop at 11:27. So at 11:35, a customer called to change an appointment. The customer said Patrice was short on the phone, which was very unusual for Patrice. Like she's normally bubbly, happy. She was just kind of short. And the call lasted about 2 minutes. So another phone call came in at 11:50 based on phone records, but Patrice did not answer this phone. So they're basically like whatever happened to Patrice happened in this 13 minutes between 11:37 a.m. when she had that phone call and 11:50 a.m.
So around 11:45 a.m., two witnesses independent of each other said they saw another car at her shop. So Tammy Pincher said that she came over the hill and saw Patrice's car that was normally parked on the side, but like we said, was now more in front of the building. And there was also a Chevy Lumina, which was pulled like directly into the shop. So the Chevy car had a Georgia Quail wildlife tag, and the salon door was open, and she saw two ladies in front of the Lumina. So there was a taller, dark-haired woman like directly in front of the car, and then on the passenger side in the front of the car, there was an older lady. She said they like had their hands on each other, like not in like a normal way. And the second witness driving by the shop reported seeing the same thing, but had a few different details. He believed the car was a Ford Taurus or a Malibu, and he also believed that he saw a man in front of the car. Which, as we know and have talked about before, like eyewitness testimony is, notoriously unreliable, especially with things like vehicle, like makes, models, even colors. I mean, not unusual to get those confused,
Yeah, they both agreed it was a blue car, but I looked up like a Ford Taurus and like a Chevy Lumina, and they literally look identical. It's like when you look at like different just types of cars from different brands, like they all look the same. But police were like, these two witnesses were independent of each other. Like they weren't in the same car. They were just two completely separate people. So it was like a very reliable testimony because they weren't like talking to each other. Like they both saw it.
Yeah, so very similar situations, but obviously the car being different isn't something that was like, oh, that's a red flag that they had different stories. It's like, no, they pretty much had the same story.
Yeah.
So on December 6th, 2005, which was 20 months after Patrice disappeared, they did find a skull. So they were able to determine that the remains belonged to Patrice Endres. So they were found in the woods at Lebanon Baptist Church in Dawson County, which is about 6 miles from her salon. So they did bring in a team to try and like find any evidence. It's a really rural, remote area. Seemed difficult that someone could like carry someone at dead weight over this terrain. But it is possible too that she was like walked into the woods, like, maybe held at gunpoint or threatened for, in whatever way. And they did find most of her bones, but they did not find her wedding ring. So it was a 1.5 carat pear-shaped diamond with two 15-carat gold rings, and they did believe they were attached. So police start interviewing everyone who knew Patrice. They looked at her financial records, phone records. They did have a long list of suspects. So Gary Hilton drew their attention after the murder of Meredith Emerson. So he had abducted a young girl, kept her alive for a number of days, and then brutally murdered her. And they knew that he had like been in the county. And Gary would call people and con them out of money, but he would also like come and do that in person. And he made a statement one day that his favorite place to go was a hair salon. So he would like go in and ask for money. He would always go around lunchtime. So we have a lot of things that, are kind of lining up for circumstantial evidence. So he is a potential suspect. They've never been able to prove an alibi, but there is no evidence to like point to him being there or evidence to say that he wasn't there. So they just really don't have anything either way on him. Another suspect is Jeremy Jones. We actually talked about him in the Ashley Freeman and Laura Bible disappearance and murder. So he also confessed to those murders and then recanted. I have him on our list to like cover eventually because there are other people that he did murder. But he is a suspect in this case because he was arrested in Mobile, Alabama for the murder of a woman. And he did confess to about 6 to 8 murders of other women. And when he confessed to those murders, he said that he needed to talk about a hairdresser in Georgia. So Jeremy Jones said he was passing by and decided to approach the salon. He asked her to come out and help him jumpstart his car, which would make sense for her car being moved. He said he then pushed her in the car, and Jones drew a diagram of where he parked his vehicle and where hers was, and it was a pretty accurate depiction. He said he killed her and he threw her off the side of a bridge into Sweetwater Creek in Douglas County. So they did search extensively in these areas and didn't find anything. Eventually, he did recant his confession, and there was no evidence to like link him to them. But he's never been officially eliminated. So, but it was the same with the other case that we covered, where he had a lot of very similar details, and it's like, how did you?
Yeah, I don't know
these
if he
things
just like
right.
heard about it or if he was led to say it also.
That is a good point. Yeah.
But he like confessed before her remains were found. So with the whole like throwing her off the side of the bridge, they were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna find her. But they didn't, and then later found. So since I don't know, I'm like, was it so soon? Because like Alabama and Georgia are very close. So I'm like, was it so soon after that you heard these details of like, we're looking for a blue Chevy Lumina or a Ford Taurus that was, and like, there's a picture, you know, like, did he like hear it offhand or?
I mean, that's true. Like he could have like taken things that he heard from the media. And then also we know police are notorious for giving you information in an interview that you then repeat back to them after hours and hours of interrogation. And especially the fact that he also confessed to other murders that we know he did not commit. It's like, is this something going on with you that you just feel the need to fuck around for no reason? I don't know.
It was so funny because Kevin was in the room when I was like watching the episode that was talking about it. He was like, I don't understand why you would confess to something that you did not do. And I'm like, nobody can figure it out.
Yeah,
it's
no, we tried to do a Patreon episode on that, and there's not a whole lot of information because who fucking knows? Yeah. So Pistol also believes that Rob could possibly be a part of what happened to Patrice. He said that she spoke about divorce a few weeks prior and that she was unhappy. And many friends on Unsolved Mysteries also spoke about how Patrice was going to leave Rob and how they frequently fought. They also told police to look at Rob. So like a couple different people are like, you might want to check him out. Also, the husband is usually a suspect anyway. Sorry, just the way it is. So Pistol said the day after Patrice went missing, Rob changed all the locks on the house, and he would not let him in, like even to get like his own clothes, you know? So Pistol went to live with his father, Don Black. So Don took it very hard when Patrice went missing. Like we said, they were still very close and like friendly with each other. They spoke daily. They were on good terms. Like it was really hard for him too. So Rob was asked to come down and be interviewed at the sheriff's department, but he had a different point of view on their marriage than Pistol and other people. Rob said they never argued, which I feel like is a huge red flag because no one never argues.
And like in the documentary when he was talking about it, he was like, we never argue because like, what's the point of arguing? And I'm like, well, that's what we all say after an argument, and we sit there and go like, well, that was dumb. But like everyone argues, like
exactly,
it happens.
Like every relationship, every like romantic relationship, every like close friendship, every parent-child relationship, like you argue with the people that you love the most. That's just how it works. So anyway, so I personally feel like that's a big red flag. But he said they did struggle in regards to Pistol because he believed that she never like disciplined him and just let him run wild. And Rob said he never heard anything about Patrice wanting to divorce him. And in regards to changing the locks, Rob only said that like he didn't like Pistol, so he wanted to like be on the safe side and have him go somewhere else. He said he didn't want the quote mental drag of watching him. And Pistol was 15 years old. So
like he was a child, and you just
literally
his mother goes missing and you kick him out of his house.
Yeah, like the day after, you're just like, oh well, I don't want the responsibility of you, so bye. Like,
and like
what?
I don't know how I feel about Rob in general. Like, in regards to if he had a hand in her
Yeah.
disappearance. But just the way he talked, I just wanted to smack him. Like the fact that you can't even be like, yeah, we fought some and maybe she was unhappy. Like it's so wild to me that like her son and like all of her friends were like, yeah, they fought a lot. She was super unhappy. She was like ready to leave. And then he's like, she never said that. We were so happy. We were the happiest we've ever been. There was never any issues. And I'm like, I mean, I know you don't want to look back on your marriage as like bad, but can you not just be honest?
Yeah. And I wonder too if part of that is because maybe he is innocent, but he realizes that he looks bad. So he's like, oh, I have to like play it up now and be like, oh no, everything was perfect. Like nothing.
And he also
happened.
mentioned he has like a degree in criminology. So when they were like, you need to come get interviewed, he was like, well, of course I am. Like, that's the first person they're going to interview. So I'm like, does he know like, oh, this looks so bad, I have to plead ignorant? But I don't know.
Even if you didn't kill her, like you sound like a shitty person. Like, how do you just kick out her 15-year-old son the day your wife goes missing? Like,
and him
your
just
stepson.
being like, I don't want the mental drag. Like, he was just too much. Like, he just needed to go somewhere else. I didn't want him in my house. Like, what?
That is insane. But Rob says that he did not kill Patrice. He said the day she went missing that he was at home, and before he went to work, he got gas, and he does have a receipt that was time-stamped. And her salon was about 45 minutes from that location, and then he went to work. So he said it wasn't possible for him to get there and back in the allotted time. Police did thoroughly investigate him and like create a timeline, and it doesn't eliminate him, but it does greatly reduce the chances that he could have done it. But it also does not eliminate a murder for hire, because even though you personally may not have done something to Patrice, that doesn't mean you weren't behind it. But they didn't really find any evidence of that either.
Which and maybe this was my skeptical brain, but the fact that he was like, well, I got gas and I got a receipt and it's like time stamped, like making sure to be somewhere else. I'm like, and I get like some people do like save every receipt and stuff like that. Like, and in today's age, I don't feel like most people get receipts at gas stations anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know his story, but it just felt so like I was 45 minutes from work and I was getting it. And then I walk into work and there's a clock right there. Like I know where I am. They know where I am. And I'm like, but
a little
it
too
seems a
perfectly
little
lined up.
like I was over here. There's no way I could do it, but someone else is doing it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So the key to this case is in those 13 minutes. So clearly Patrice was spoken with right before and then was gone. A very, very short time period. So what happened to Patrice? Like, how is this blue car involved? Where is her wedding ring? Like, why was she found but not her wedding ring? And the police do say they're holding back some information from the public because they define it as guilty knowledge information. So basically only the killer would know. So obviously they're not going to release that information because they don't want more false confessions, and they don't want, they want to make sure that the information that they're holding, if someone does confess or if they do find other evidence that can link all that together, they're able to like be confident that they have the right person.
And I'm so curious as to what it is. Like, I want to know, like, what do you know that's like so defining that only the killer would know? Like,
I feel like it would probably, I don't know, because like only like her like remains were like her like
maybe cause of death if there was like if you knew there was like blunt force trauma to the head or gunshot to the head or something. Like, when it's just a skeleton, I feel like that's the only way you could know that.
Yeah, like I feel like there are only a few specific causes of death that you can determine from skeletonized remains.
That could be easy to guess if you're false confessing, like, I shot her, and they're like, nope, wrong. And so then it's like, or like you could get lucky, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it has something to do with like the salon. Like, I feel like there's something there and not just like with her remains, but I could be wrong, but I'm just so curious what it is.
Yeah, very true. So Rob did ask for Patrice's remains to be like laid out in an anatomical position. Like we said, it was only bones that were found, so that he could say goodbye. He also carried her skull around for a while and then put her back and kissed her goodbye. Which, like, everyone grieves differently, but
ooh, it's kind of weird.
That's not
the
sitting with a
anatomical
body.
But not that
Yeah.
anatomical position. Like, I get that because you're like, I want to see her like as I would in a casket for closure, but like picking up her skull and carrying it around, I'm like,
I can't
I
get
can't
behind that.
imagine.
No.
That's
No.
weird.
No. He also said that once he got her ashes, he slept with them at night for a while, which I don't feel like is a super weird thing. That seems normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Rob does have all of her ashes and unfortunately has never like shared them with Pistol or even offered, which is super fucking shitty.
Yeah, he's basically like, no, these are mine and no one else gets them. Like, basically refuses. Especially just because it's like her son, like
Yeah, like that is her
just share
child.
some of them. Like,
Yeah,
it's not, I don't know. It's very sad. The whole like how Rob treats Pistol in this whole situation, like,
is horrific. Yeah.
and you're old enough to be a fucking adult.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
you're
you're
like
plenty
50.
old enough to
You're
be an
like
adult
50, you're
here.
57 when she disappears. So like you're old enough to like fucking know better,
Yeah, and to
basically.
understand that like, oh, I should treat her child with some respect and I should not like hoard his mom's ashes. Like what the fuck is wrong with you?
And you don't have to give them all. Like you could just give a portion of them or just keep a portion. Like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
not that, I don't know.
So if anyone does have any information about the disappearance and death of Patrice Endres, please call the Georgia Bureau of Investigation tip line at 800-597-8477, or you can go to unsolved.com, where they do have the ability to submit information there as well. Yeah, that is a super sad, tragic disappearance and murder of Patrice Endres, and I just hope one day her family is able to have some closure and understand what happened to her and why. And that just has to be so hard not knowing like what
What
happened to her,
happened?
what she went through, how in those 13 minutes she disappeared, and there's no, I mean, maybe there is more information that, again, just, like I said, hasn't been shared. But that also leads me to hope that maybe one day they'll be able to identify her killer and share more information about what happened with her to her.
Yeah. It's like devastating and just out of nowhere and random, which I feel like Rob being involved somehow makes more sense than just random. But as we see, random things like this happen, and it would not surprise me if someone came into her salon and was like, I'm having issues with my car. Like, could you help me? Or like, could you give me a jump start? And that's why her car is moved. Or, just feeding on people's kindness and their help. I do find it weird that she was kind of in a mood that day.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, was there some fight? Was there something like what was going on that
I was
she was
wondering
acting so
too.
different?
Yeah, I was wondering too. I meant to say something when we were at that part and then I forgot. But I was wondering too, is that one of those things that like people thought about after the fact because something happened? You know what I mean? Like on the
Yeah.
day that, you were in the salon or the day that you called, like, did you think at that moment, like, oh, she seems kind of off? Or did the next
Like
day or later,
hindsight.
yeah, like once you found out, like, oh, she's disappeared, and then you think back and you're like, well, actually, she did seem kind of like, you know what I mean? Is it one of those things that maybe the smallest difference in her behavior, tone of voice, whatever, that you never would have noticed otherwise, that now you're like, oh, yeah, that, like maybe it's exaggerated in your brain because of the circumstances. I do wonder if that could have been part of it.
And if you do believe Pistol and many of her friends, and there was not just one friend or just Pistol saying her and Rob were not doing well, there were multiple. So if she is unhappy, like, did they get into a fight or was she battling, I am going to ask him for a divorce or I did ask him for a divorce? Like, what
That's
emotions
true.
is she going through? Because even though she is such a bubbly person, like, we all have hardships and we all have days where we're just not there. So maybe she was just distracted and maybe just upset that day, just having a bad day.
And I do wonder too, like her asking Pistol before, if something were to happen to me, like where would you go or whatever, like maybe that wasn't a case of, foreshadowing of her like running away kind of thing, but maybe she thought she was in danger for some reason. And so that kind of was in her mind. Like one of those things, like I've heard of women who like write in their journals, like, I don't think this will ever happen, but if my husband does murder me, blah, 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 like they kind of have this inkling, but they're like, it's not enough that I feel comfortable like saying something, but it's like in my brain, like maybe.
I literally like after I broke up with my toxic ex-boyfriend, had a folder on my computer of all the text and things he was sending me labeled if I go missing. Like literally, because I was like, there is a chance he could be crazy enough that he would do something. And I don't want to be like, you know, over the top or anything. But I was like, in case something happens, like I took all the screenshots of text messages and put them into a folder and had all the evidence there just in case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully one day her family will have more information and we'll have closure. And again, if you happen to know anything about this case or anyone involved, you know, please make sure that you do reach out and share that information.
Yeah, and I think it's not helpful that her remains were found, but I think for Pistol especially to know like his mom did not leave him. Like she did not run away.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not too much comfort, but like to know like, yeah, she would never have left me.
And I feel like too, to always have to wonder, like, is my loved one alive? Like, I just like it has to be not
like, is she out there somewhere?
Yeah,
is she
exactly.
trying to communicate? Is she trying like, why did she leave? Like,
yeah, agreed.
Why didn't she take me with her? Because he was 15, you know, like, so.
Yeah, that's so hard. Yeah, okay, awkward transition time. Sorry, guys, but do want to bring it up on a high note for you guys before we close out. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is I touched on this last week that it was Kevin and I's anniversary. So we did go on our trip and it was very nice. Nothing horrible happened. I did get stung by like a weird bug in a restaurant, which was weird.
That's that preemptive perk of the week coming to bite
the
you.
universe was shoulder. Like, you can't get by this easy. And the food was not good.
Oh, that is always really disappointing. I also wanted to make a joke last time, but I did not because I'm like, I don't want to put that out there. But where you were like, oh, like I'm not going to ruin it by saying, and I was like, and then Courtney and Kevin get divorced this week and they don't make it to the. But I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to make that joke until later.
We also had like a really bad issue with the hot tub. So when we showed up, someone had unplugged the hot tub for some reason, which they literally said in the book, do not do. So as you know, it takes for fucking ever to heat up. So we got there Thursday. It did not heat up until Saturday morning.
Yeah, I believe that
long. Yeah. And then because it was so hot that day, it started overheating.
Oh my gosh.
So then it was too hot to get into because it was like 108 degrees and was going to burn us. But it finally got to a point where like we could sit in it, but it was so hot outside, like we weren't even really enjoying it. So yeah, it was like, kind of a bummer, but it was still nice. Like just, you know, we went on a hike and that was really enjoyable. And just like having some time, just the two of us, because so often, like obviously we live together, but like we usually just do our own things. And like I've been traveling a lot and like we've just been kind of like doing our own thing, like whatever. So it was nice, just like the two of us with like no distractions, just to like have that time.
I feel like it's so easy, like in your own house to just like, okay, like it's, you know, work's over and like you're going to watch this, read that, play this, whatever. I'm going to do this. But like when you're on vacation together, it's like, oh, like we're intentionally like, let's play a game together. Let's watch a movie together. Let's, you know,
let's talk about something like, like we're usually just sitting on the couch, like kind of doing our own thing. Like obviously like kind of talking to each other, but not anything like that. Like we're just kind of like coexisting. And then I travel so much for work now. I feel like, you know, it's nice to get time away from him because then I miss him, but it's also like, I do kind of miss you now.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of reconnect. And I also just pictured you guys where you're talking about how it was like too hot. And I'm like, Courtney and Kevin go to the store and get like a bunch of bags of ice and they come back and they're just tossing it. We did
because they told us to put cold water in it. So I like took my hydro jug and like put cold water in it and dumped it in there. And it helped a little bit, but
yeah. That does suck. Yeah. When we went to Gatlinburg with my family a few months ago, we got there Friday night and left Sunday morning. So like a super quick trip. And we didn't even like everyone got there at like 8:00 Friday night. And then we had kids to put to bed and like a whole, you know, so it wasn't until like almost midnight that we were like, oh, let's get in the hot tub. And then it wasn't on. And then, like you said, it takes forever to heat up. And then the next day.
It heats up at like a degree an hour.
Yeah. And like the next day, like it still was not like any better. So like not even like working towards it. So then we had to message the Airbnb host. So then he sent someone out like a couple hours later, finally got there, finally got it fixed. And then literally the morning, that we had to leave, it finally was at the temperature it needed to be. And I was like, well, we didn't get to use that at all. So
yeah. It's a bummer when that happens, but
yeah,
it was still a nice weekend and enjoyable,
good.
and it was fun.
Nice to get
Bryson City
away.
is just such a cute little town. It's just nice. So that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So it's funny because before we started recording, I was thinking about what my perk of the week was going to be. And, before we moved back to Tennessee, like Andrew and I would go sometimes literally months without seeing anyone outside of our home that was not like a work event, friend, that, whatever. So it was like anytime like someone came to town or like we came to town or we met up with somebody, like that was like always my perk of the week, was like I saw this other human this week, And then now every week it's like I'll like have like 3 events a week. So I'm like, how do I pick like a single perk of the
How do
week?
you pick one? Yeah.
But my specific, so we did have a great weekend with like his family and my family, and of course Courtney, because Courtney's family, and just
I'm always
a good
around
weekend.
somewhere.
Exactly. Good weekend getting to see everyone. But my specific perk of the week is that yesterday we had a birthday party for my sister-in-law. And so my husband is one of 5 children. And for the first time in, I think like 4 or 5 years, all 5 children were together at the same time. So that was super exciting because it's been a long time since everyone has been able to be like in the same state, in the same house. So everyone's significant others and children, and everyone was all together. So it was super nice. And we got to build a gate for our deck because it's not a party with my husband's family unless we're building or fixing something. So
that's the kind of party I need. Like I'm hosting a party, but you're also helping me do something. So it's like beneficial.
That's literally what we do every time. It's like, oh, like what can I bring for the party? And most people are like, oh, you can bring drinks or ice or dessert. And we're like, well, I need this kind of saw and I need this and I need this 2x4. And so they show up and like basically unload their entire house, to be able to help us fix things and cook and do all the fun things. But it was really nice. And we had 16 people and 7 dogs here. So it was quite the
quite a bit of
party.
People.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a great time and nice to have everyone all together in the same house for what will be the last time for quite a while. So
yeah.
I just cut out the worst cough that like sounds like I smoke 4 packs a day. I don't know what just happened.
It was also like out of nowhere. Like I feel like normally like I can tell when you're about to cough, but it was just like boom, there.
It literally, I was like, so if you want to, and I like took a deep breath and it just, I don't know, my lungs were like, nope, we're not doing that.
No more deep breaths today.
I did not have a warning for that one either, Courtney. It just came out. But if you guys want to tell us about your parties, your anniversary trips, your husbands, your
thoughts
family.
On this case? What do you think happened? Who did
that
it?
too? The important thing, yes. My brain is like, what are we even talking about at this point? Yeah, so you guys know where to find us on all of the things. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Again, please share information if you happen to have any connections to this case, that area, anything that you think might help. We say it all the time, like even the smallest thing that you're like, oh, well, like this doesn't really matter, like it might. So please share anything you know. And you guys can also find us on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you guys want some extra bonus content, some hangouts, some little goodies, all kinds of little fun things happening over there. Also always open to suggestions of things you guys want to see over there. So if you think something would be a cool perk that would entice you to join, definitely let us know.
Yeah, because we got like 31 bonuses over there. So they're really accumulating. A lot happening. A lot to binge if you're a binger. Yes. But yeah, let us know if you can give us 5 stars on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you can, or give us a thumbs up on YouTube or subscribe, anything like that. That would be much appreciated. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.